we have the definitive answer. Is the SSPX in schism? A lot of people are asking this because, as we've discovered, there's a lot of people who are looking for reverent liturgy. They look around, they find themselves maybe in a liturgical desert, and they see, oh, there's an SSPX church right there. Can I go there? And they start asking these questions. Father, what would you say to somebody who's in that situation?
Well, this is a very good question and a burning question for many people. And it's a question where there are disputes, but let me shed some light on it. In answer to the basic question, is the Society of St. Pius X, founded by Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre, in schism? And the answer is no, because the excommunication of the leadership of the SSPX, who participated in the illegal consecrations back in 1988, that excommunication was lifted. So the cause of, one of the causes of that excommunication was that the Holy See declared it was a schismatic act to ordain those bishops without papal permission. That the penalty's been lifted. So the penalty's lifted, therefore the offense is no longer present. On the other hand, the SSPX is not canonically regular in the sense that it is not subject in the ordinary way to the governing authority of the Holy See and in its relations with diocesan bishops. This is clear because the Holy See entered into negotiations and dialogue under Pope Benedict with the leadership or the representatives of the leadership of the Society of Pius X, and they never arrived at a mutually satisfactory agreement, which basically means the SSPX did not accept what Rome was proposing to them as the condition for what we would call regularization, which means that they would come under, not theoretically, but in fact, the governing authority of the Holy See. And this is important because while they're not schismatics, meaning the people who had been declared schismatics, the four bishops who were ordained, but they are also not regularized in the sense that the Holy See was looking to do. Now, what is the practical experience now? Pope Francis went beyond what Pope Benedict did on a practical level, because he has granted permission for Society of Pius X priests to witness marriages and to hear confessions. And, you know, he did that out of pastoral charity because he wanted to ensure the validity of the absolutions that were given and also the marriages that were entered into. It's presumed, of course, that a marriage will often include a mass. So the SSPX priest, who is going to witness a marriage, has to get permission, proper permission from the local pastor or bishop to do it with canonical validity, but he's authorized to seek that and to be granted it by the Holy See. And that would include then celebrating a mass if that was, in fact, what the couple and the priest had agreed upon. And if it's legitimate to be at a wedding mass that the Pius X priest is celebrating, that means it's not an activity which is viewed by the Holy See as being harmful to souls. And so therefore the conclusion may be made, are there other circumstances in which I can take the generosity of Pope Francis for the Society of Pius X priests and make use of that in my own life? And that's where you get some very interesting things, because, for instance, diocesan bishops are inviting Society of Pius X pilgrimages and the like to celebrate masses at their churches. And, I remember a few years ago, there was a Society of Pius X procession for a Holy Year, and they went right through St. Peter's Square into St. Peter's Basilica, and they were welcomed. We have a retired bishop I believe from Switzerland, who is living at a Pius X's house in his retirement. So therefore, of course, if he's not celebrating a mass, he might be attending a mass, and that's the Holy See has no problem with that. On the other hand, of course, you have to say, is the good of souls promoted by going to mass with a group of priests who are not submissive to the ordinary governing authority of the bishops or the Pope? Because, for instance, Pius X chapels are established in dioceses without the permission of the local bishop, and they don't submit to ordinary controls that the local bishop places upon religious or apostolic houses and apostolates. But on the other hand, we also get reports, which I believe are accurate, that if a Pius X priest commits canonical offenses, that the leadership of the Society of Pius X, with the agreement of the Dicastery of the Doctrine of the Faith, presents canonical cases for judgment of those priests for their possible removal from the priesthood. So
wow, it's complicated.
If the society, if they're operating in a cooperative way with the Dicastery of the Doctrine of the Faith in order to enforce canon law, then even though there's no formal agreement, overall regulation of their activities in the life of the church, there's partial agreement, and there's a recognition of this. So I know there are people who want to go to Pius X masses, and my answer to them is one question is, can you fulfill your obligation for Sunday if you go to a Pius X mass? The answer is yes, because it is a Catholic valid mass. Should one do it? Well, let's say, for instance, you live in an area where that's the only mass available, and otherwise you'd miss Sunday mass. Well, then you can do that, but you have to take the precaution not to adopt a separatist spirit, which would say, I reject the authority of the local bishop or the Pope, and I'm simply going to recognize the authority of the Pius X priest. You can't say that, because that's an anti-Catholic sentiment. And I hope the Pius X priests aren't doing that. Certainly, when the Pope says to them, you can witness marriages, now you hear confessions, the leadership of Pius X did not reject that and say, well, we have no interest in the Pope's opinions on this. We do what we want. No, they were happy to receive that. So there's an indication of a cooperative spirit, and that has to be extended. And I would encourage the leadership, please go ahead and make that agreement, because the last thing we want is that they ordain more bishops illegally, because that would be another cause for them to be declared schismatic if they did that after all of this compromise and indulgence that the Holy See has engaged in. So we can talk about that in further appearances on the program.